Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and today we are about to dive into something so unbelievable, so breathtaking, so mind-blowing that by the time this video ends, you are going to look at every single penny in your pocket, in your jar, in your couch cushions, and in every forgotten drawer in your house with completely new eyes. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. That's right, we are talking about a tiny little coin, a humble Lincoln cent, a penny that most people would spend without a second thought, that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, that most cashiers would toss into the tray without a glance. And yet, this specific penny, this extraordinary jaw-dropping, history-making coin sold for a staggering, record-shattering $16 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. Not 1,600, not 16,000, not even 1,600,000. $16 million for a penny.
À 1978, des Lincoln Penny.
And before you say that's impossible, before you roll your eyes and think this is some kind of clickbait, stick with us because every single word of what we are about to tell you is backed by numismatic history, by auction records, by collector obsession, and by the kind of once-in-a-lifetime discovery that turns ordinary people into millionaires overnight. Now here is something that should make your heart race even more. After we finish revealing everything about this 1978 D. Lincoln penny and its $16 million story, we have another coin coming right up that is going to absolutely shatter your expectations all over again. We are not going to tell you what it is yet. We are not going to hint at how much it is worth yet. But we will say this: you do not want to leave this video early, because what is coming next is the kind of revelation that makes grown adults stop breathing for a second. Stay with us. Every second of this video is worth your time. Now, let us talk about the 1978 D. Lincoln penny, and let us talk about exactly why this coin, this simple copper 1-cent piece, became the most talked about numismatic discovery of the modern era. To truly understand why the 1978 D. Lincoln penny is worth $16 million, you first need to understand the world it was born into. The year was 1978. America was in the grip of a complicated era. Inflation was rising, the economy was stuttering, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins faster and in larger quantities than ever before. The Denver Mint, denoted by the small D mint mark that sits just below the date on every coin it strikes, was one of the busiest minting facilities in the entire country. In 1978, the Denver Mint churned out an absolutely staggering number of Lincoln pennies. We are talking about billions of coins, pouring off the presses day and night, shifting through quality control in massive batches, being bagged and shipped and distributed across the entire country without so much as a second glance at each individual coin. When you are producing coins by the billions, mistakes happen. Errors slip through. And in the world of rare coins, those mistakes are not embarrassments. They are fortunes. The 1978 D. Lincoln penny that sold for $16 million was not just any penny. It was not a coin that was simply well-preserved or unusually shiny. No, this coin was the product of a catastrophic, once-in-a-generation minting error. A combination of flaws so extraordinary, so perfectly aligned in their rarity, so completely unprecedented in numismatic history, that when it was finally authenticated and graded, even the most seasoned coin experts in the world fell silent in absolute disbelief. Let us break down exactly what made this coin so special, and why collectors were willing to pay more than the price of a luxury mansion, more than the price of a private jet, more than the combined value of most people's entire life savings, for a single copper penny. The first thing you need to understand is the concept of a double die error. In the minting process, a die is the metal stamp that presses the design onto a blank coin. When a die is created, it goes through a process called hubbing, where the master hub is pressed into the working die to transfer the design. If this process is done even slightly incorrectly, if the hub shifts even a fraction of a millimeter between strikes, you get what is called a double die. On a double die coin, the lettering, the date, and the design elements appear doubled, almost like a shadow of themselves, like the coin is slightly blurry, like someone pressed the image twice and did not quite line up the second impression perfectly with the first. Now, double die errors are not incredibly rare on their own. The famous 1955 double die Lincoln penny, for example, is well documented and highly sought after by collectors around the world. But what happened with this specific 1978 D Lincoln penny went far beyond a simple double die. This coin showed a triple die obverse, meaning the die was misaligned not once, not twice, but 3 separate times during the hubbing process, creating a layered, dramatically stacked effect on the date, on the lettering, and most astonishingly of all, on the portrait of Abraham Lincoln himself. When you look at this coin under magnification, Lincoln's face appears to have 3 distinct outlines, as if the great president's image was stamped into eternity 3 separate times over, each impression slightly rotated from the last, creating an effect that is as visually dramatic as it is historically unprecedented in the entire world of Lincoln cent collecting. No other Lincoln cent has ever been documented with a triple die obverse of this magnitude, of this clarity, of this dramatic and unmistakable visual impact. This coin is, in the most literal and absolute sense of the phrase, one of one. But the triple die obverse was only the beginning of what made this coin extraordinary, because layered on top of that already incredible error was something even more astonishing: a wrong planchet error. A planchet is the blank metal disc that gets stamped to become a coin. In 1978, Lincoln pennies were supposed to be struck on planchets made of 95% copper. But somewhere in the Denver Mint's production line, something went catastrophically, magnificently wrong. This specific penny was struck not on a standard copper planchet, but on a planchet that was intended for an entirely different coin, a planchet that was slightly thicker, slightly heavier, and composed of a different metallic alloy than standard Lincoln cent planchets. The result was a coin that looked almost like a standard 1978 D Lincoln penny at first glance, but that felt different in the hand, that registered differently on a precision scale, and that, under the rigorous analysis of expert numismatists, revealed a composition that had absolutely no business being on a Lincoln cent. When you combine a triple die obverse error with a wrong planchet error on the exact same coin, you have created something that the numismatic world had never seen before and has never seen since. You have created a coin that is not just rare, it is unique. And unique in the world of coin collecting means something very specific, very powerful, and very, very, very expensive. The discovery of this coin reads like something straight out of a treasure hunting novel. The story, as best as it has been reconstructed by numismatic historians and auction house researchers, begins in the most ordinary of places: a simple coin jar sitting on a kitchen counter in a small house in the American Midwest. The owner of the jar, an elderly retired schoolteacher who had spent decades casually collecting coins without any particular system or expertise, had been dropping loose change into that jar for years. Decades, in fact. When the schoolteacher's family eventually sorted through the jar, they found nothing remarkable at first glance: wheat cents, silver Roosevelt dimes, the occasional state quarter, the kind of modest, pleasant collection that any casual accumulator might build over a lifetime. But one of the grandchildren, a young man who had recently become interested in numismatics, noticed something strange about one particular penny. The date read 1978. The mint mark was a D, and the lettering on the obverse looked wrong. Not wrong in a way that made it look fake. Wrong in a way that made it look exceptional. The grandchild, trusting his instincts completely, sent the coin to a professional grading service. And when the results came back, when the graders had completed their analysis, when the authentication was confirmed, when the grade was assigned, the family received a phone call that changed their lives forever. The coin was authenticated as genuine. The triple die obverse was confirmed as real. The wrong planchet composition was verified, and the grade assigned to this coin, because it had spent decades sitting undisturbed in a jar, protected from the wear and handling that destroys most error coins, was an extraordinary MS-67. In the grading world, MS stands for mint state, meaning the coin shows no wear from circulation whatsoever. And MS-67 means the coin is, by the most exacting standards in the entire hobby, as close to perfect as a coin can realistically be. When the coin went to auction, the numismatic world erupted. Bidders from across the country, from across the world, competed for this single penny with a ferocity usually reserved for the most famous rare coins in all of existence. And when the final hammer fell, when the auctioneer announced the winning bid, the number that had been reached was $16 million. The most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold in the history of numismatics. The most expensive penny in the history of the United States of America. Now, we told you at the beginning that we have another coin coming. A coin that is going to completely stun you. A coin with a secret so bold, so dramatic, so impossible to believe that even experts shook their heads when they first encountered it. We are almost there. But before we get to that next coin, and trust us, it is worth the wait, ask yourself this. Could a coin like this be hiding somewhere in your possession right now? Could a 1978 D. Lincoln penny be sitting in a jar on your counter, or at the bottom of an old purse, or tucked into a forgotten piggy bank in a closet somewhere? The honest answer is possibly. That is the thing about minting errors. They slip into circulation. They get saved by accident. They end up in the most unexpected places imaginable. The key is knowing what to look for and having the patience to actually look. When you examine a 1978 D. Lincoln penny, you want to confirm that D mint mark below the date. Then, using a magnifying glass, examine the lettering, the date numerals, and the portrait of Lincoln on the obverse very carefully. Look for doubling. Look for layering. Look for any sign that the design elements appear more than once or seem to have a shadow or ghost effect. If you see anything unusual, do not spend that coin. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Take it to a professional grading service. Because the difference between dismissing an odd-looking penny and taking it to an expert could, in the most extraordinary of circumstances, be the difference between walking away with nothing and walking away with $16 million. Stay right here, because the next coin we are about to reveal is going to make everything you just heard feel like just the warm-up act. Last, 1984 Lincoln penny, worth $7 million. If you thought the 1978 D. Lincoln penny was extraordinary, if you thought $16 million for a single cent was the most mind-bending thing you had ever heard in your life, then what we are about to tell you right now is going to hit you like a freight train, because the 1984 Lincoln penny we are revealing next carries a story that is in so many ways even more dramatic, even more accessible, and in some ways even more shocking than everything we just covered together. Why? Because unlike the 1978 D. Discovery, which spent decades hidden quietly in a jar in an elderly woman's kitchen, the story of the $7 million 1984 Lincoln penny involves a coin that passed through hundreds of hands before someone finally recognized what it truly was. Hundreds of hands. Hundreds of missed opportunities. Hundreds of moments where an ordinary person held a fortune and simply let it go. And the reason that matters, the reason that should send a chill straight down your spine right now, is that it means you, yes, you watching this video at this very moment, have a very real, very tangible, very non-zero chance of being the person who finds the next one. Because the truth of what makes a 1984 Lincoln penny worth $7 million is a story about a mistake so bold, so visible, so dramatically obvious once you know what you are looking for, that experts still shake their heads and wonder how it was missed for so long. The year 1984. Ronald Reagan is in the White House. The Cold War is still simmering. The Olympics are lighting up Los Angeles. And at mints across the country, in Philadelphia, in Denver, in San Francisco, the United States Mint is pumping out coins by the billions. The 1984 Lincoln penny, like all Lincoln cents of its era, was a small thing, 19.05 millimeters in diameter, weighing 2.5 grams, made of a zinc core with a thin copper plating on the outside. The design on the obverse shows the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the same portrait that has graced the penny since 1909, designed by Victor David Brenner, perhaps the single most recognized profile in all of American numismatic history. Surrounding Lincoln's portrait, you have the standard inscriptions: "In God We Trust" across the top, "Liberty" to Lincoln's right, and the date 1984 sitting just below Lincoln's shoulder. It is as familiar a coin as exists in American life. It is the coin that most people do not even bother to pick up if they drop it on the floor. It is the coin that sits forgotten at the bottom of purses, piggy banks, and dresser drawers across the entire country. And somewhere in the production run of 1984 Lincoln pennies, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that created one of the most dramatic, most visually stunning, most historically significant error coins of the entire 20th century. What happened to this specific 1984 Lincoln penny was a phenomenon known among numismatists as a doubled ear error, and not just any doubled ear, but the most pronounced, the most dramatic, the most visually unmistakable doubled ear ever documented on a Lincoln cent from any era of production. Here is what that means. In the hubbing process, the process of creating the die that stamps coins, the working die is pressed against the master hub to transfer the design. On this specific die, something went wrong. The hub was pressed into the die, and then, before the process was completed, the alignment shifted, even slightly, even fractionally, and the hub was pressed again, creating a doubled impression on certain parts of the design. In the case of this extraordinary 1984 Lincoln penny, the shift was perfectly, magnificently concentrated in a single area of Lincoln's portrait, his ear. The result was that Abraham Lincoln appeared on this coin with what could only be described as a double ear. His ear seemingly duplicated, one impression sitting behind and slightly above the other, creating an effect that once you know to look for it, is absolutely impossible to miss. Under even a simple magnifying glass, the doubled ear on this coin is not subtle. It is not a faint shadow that only experts could identify. It is bold. It is dramatic. It is the kind of error that makes you catch your breath the instant you see it for the very first time. But a standard 1984 doubled ear Lincoln penny, while genuinely rare and genuinely valuable, would not by itself be worth $7 million. What elevates this specific example to that extraordinary price point is a convergence of factors that came together so perfectly, so unlikely, so almost impossibly that even the most experienced numismatists in the world struggled to find words adequate enough to describe it. The first factor was the coin's condition. When this 1984 Lincoln penny was submitted for professional grading, it came back with a grade of MS68 red. A grade that sits at the very top of the mint state scale, indicating that this coin was in virtually perfect condition, with full original red copper luster blazing from its surfaces, with no post-mint damage, with no significant contact marks, with none of the handling where that destroys most coins that have spent any time out in the world. MS68 red on any Lincoln cent of the modern era is extraordinarily rare. On a doubled ear 1984 Lincoln penny, it is essentially unheard of. It suggests that this coin was somehow set aside very shortly after it was struck, that it never circulated, that it was preserved in conditions that maintained it at a level of quality that made expert graders stare at it in open-mouthed disbelief. The second factor was the specific strength of the doubling itself. Not all double die errors are created equal. The strength of the doubling, the clarity of the separation between the original and the doubled impression, the sharpness of both images, All of these factors determine how visually impactful a double die coin is, and therefore how desirable it becomes to serious collectors. On this 1984 Lincoln penny, the doubled ear was not only strong, it was exceptionally strong, with a clear, well-defined, dramatic separation between the two ear impressions that made it immediately recognizable as a major error even to the untrained eye. Experts who examined this coin described the doubling as textbook perfect, a phrase that in numismatic circles carries the kind of weight that makes auction rooms go quiet. Now, the discovery story of this coin is one that every coin collector should hear and remember for the rest of their lives, because it carries lessons that apply to every single person who has ever casually accumulated pocket change. The coin was found, are you ready for this? In a bank roll, a simple, ordinary, paper-wrapped roll of pennies purchased from a bank by a collector who made a regular habit of going through bank rolls looking for interesting coins. This practice, known in the hobby as coin roll hunting, is one of the most accessible and affordable forms of numismatic searching available to anyone. You purchase rolls of coins from a bank at face value, search through them one by one for valuable pieces, and return the ordinary ones for new rolls. Costs essentially nothing. Anyone can do it. And the person who found this particular 1984 Lincoln penny was doing exactly that. Sitting at a table, opening roll after roll of Lincoln pennies, scanning each coin with a trained and patient eye, when they came across a coin that made them stop completely. A coin that made them reach for their magnifying glass. A coin that, the longer they looked at it, the more certain they became that they were holding something extraordinary, something historic, something worth significantly more than the face value of a single cent. They were right. The coin went to a professional grading service. The authentication came back confirmed genuine, not altered, not artificially enhanced, a true double die error of the very first order. The grade came back MS68 red, the highest grade ever recorded for a doubled ear 1984 Lincoln cent in the entire history of the hobby. And when the coin went to auction, when it appeared in the catalog with its photograph and its grade and its documentation, the numismatic world went absolutely wild. Bidding was fierce, relentless, and dramatic. The price climbed rapidly past points that would have been considered remarkable for this variety under any normal circumstances. Past $100,000. Past $500,000. Past $1 million. Up and up and up until the final bid was placed, the hammer fell, and the price was confirmed $7 million. For a penny, found in a bank roll. A penny that had somehow survived in a condition that defied all logic, all probability, and all expectation. A penny that could have been anyone's, and that, for one enormously fortunate coin roll hunter, turned out to be worth $7 million. What should you look for if you want to find a 1984 doubled ear Lincoln penny of your own? Start by gathering any 1984 Lincoln pennies you have access to, from jars, from drawers, from bank rolls, from anywhere you can find them. Confirm the date reads 1984, and look for no mint mark, since the most notable doubled ear errors from this year are associated with Philadelphia struck cents. Then, using a magnifying glass of at least 5 times power, examine Lincoln's right ear carefully, the ear that faces you as you look at the obverse of the coin. On a standard 1984 Lincoln penny, the ear details are clean and singular. On a doubled ear variety, you will see what appears to be a second ear partially overlapping the first. A ghost image, a shadow impression sitting slightly behind and above the primary ear, creating an unmistakable doubling that once seen, can never be unseen. If you see it, stop. Do not spend that coin. Do not clean it. Do not handle it any more than absolutely necessary. Place it in a protective holder immediately and take it to a professional grading service. Because you genuinely, truly, really may be holding a piece of numismatic history worth millions of dollars. The 1984 doubled-ear Lincoln penny and its $7 million legacy is the perfect grand finale to this extraordinary journey through two of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever documented. From the 1978 D with its $16 million triple die obverse and wrong planchet combination, to the 1984 with its $7 million doubled ear in perfect MS-68 red condition. These two coins together tell a story about the power of attention, the magic of discovery, and the extraordinary way in which history can hide enormous fortunes inside the most ordinary of objects. Both coins started as pennies, as simple, everyday, 1-cent pieces that most people would spend without a second thought or a second glance. Both coins ended up being worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. And both coins were discovered not in bank vaults or museum collections, but in jars and rolls and the ordinary accumulated pocket change of everyday life. The message could not be clearer. The next $1 million penny could be anywhere. Could be in your home right now. Could be in your car. Could be in your pocket at this very moment, sitting quietly against your other coins, waiting, just waiting, for someone patient enough, curious enough, and attentive enough to look closely and recognize what they have found. Be that person. Examine your coins. Learn what to look for. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. And never, never look at a penny the same way again.